Alert Media.
Hello, my fellow Dreadites, and welcome to the Dread Alert podcast. I'm Vince.
I'm Sarah.
And today we're talking about one of the most influential and important slasher films ever made, and one of our favorite films. This is a Vince Select, and it is Scream from 1996. I cannot tell you the number of times I saw this movie in the theaters when I was a teenager, and it solidified my love of horror movies, specifically slasher films. I'd seen a ton when I was a kid, but Scream was really the one for me.
I did not see it in theaters, but it was also very influential on me and my love of horror and what horror really stands for.
Scream was directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson, and while it was a big break for Kevin Williamson, it was a career rehabilitation for Wes Craven, who'd actually passed on the project once or twice prior to accepting the job. He had had some failures, and while he did have A Nightmare on Elm Street under his belt, his new Nightmare, which I absolutely love, didn't do as well as expected at the box office. I would go so far as to argue that New Nightmare was the trial run, or the template, for what Scream would become in terms of meta horror, but more so postmodern horror and a postmodern slasher film.
I would absolutely agree with you, and I think that that's also the reason that I really love New Nightmare as much as I do as well, because it reminds me so much of Scream, but not Scream at the same time.
Yeah, I think the comedy aspect is the magic ingredient that makes Scream work, as opposed to just going super dark with it. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot to love about New Nightmare. I think the child performances might be a little bit crunchy in the film. No fault of the actor there. Mm-hmm. I think other podcasters say that they always blame the director if a child performance isn't up to par. That said, I think Wes Craven does a fine job with that, and I think Freddy is at his scariest since maybe 1 or perhaps 3 in A New Nightmare. I really, truly enjoy that film.
But maybe we'll cover that on another podcast.
I would think that's a wise call.
Let's
jump in with the plot of Scream.
Yes. So if you're not familiar with the plot of Scream...
Yeah, if you haven't seen it by now, spoilers abound.
Exactly. But we open with the iconic opening scene of this movie with Casey Becker receiving a phone call from a very mysterious individual.
What's interesting about this scene is it was shot over the first 5 days of shooting. The house was new. It was a new build, but it feels like it's 50 years old. It's so classic looking. And what I love most about this, the most interesting factoid about this whole opening, and a lot of people already know this, but Roger L. Jackson and Drew Barrymore never met face to face. All of this was done over a phone line. And what's even weirder about this is, I don't know if someone tapped the phone or had access to the phone line, but the police were called on them because they thought this was a real stalking situation.
That's so crazy. Somebody had to have been listening in on their conversation.
I don't know how it happened. I'm pulling this from the audio commentary, but the police were called on them because of the conversations that were being had. I don't know if someone had overheard it on the set or if the phone line itself was compromised, but it was done all over the phone, which I think is a really clever way to increase the stakes and the urgency of the moment.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that this kind of feels authentic to me, and it's because it was.
Yeah.
Drew had no idea who Roger L. Jackson was. It was just this mysterious voice on the line, and that's scary.
He's a lovely man.
He is.
We have met Roger L. Jackson. I'll go into this at some point on the channel, but he was so kind to our baby. He had like googly eye finger puppet deals that he made his hand talk to the baby, and she was almost a year old. She thought that was the coolest thing she had ever seen in her life, and it was awesome. We've not met Drew Barrymore, but I can say Roger L. Jackson is a class act.
Yes, and this is where we get the iconic line, "Do you like scary movies?"
Yeah, that was actually the title of the film prior to rewrites, prior to a mandate from Miramax. They named the film Scary Movie and jammed in as many instances of Scary Movie as they possibly could into the runtime of this film, only to have the title changed. Kevin Williamson said he could not imagine the film being titled Scream, but and I think the audio commentary was recorded probably in production for Scream 2, so a year later. Once it was Scream, he couldn't imagine it being anything else.
Is that why they ended up going with Scary Movie for like the parody of Scream?
Makes sense to me, yeah. They had a ton of merch. The whole crew and cast were wearing Scary Movie shirts. So the hat said Scream and the shirt said Scary Movie. The director chair said, I mean, it was a mess in terms of the title of the film, but who needs a working title when you have a title change halfway through shooting, I guess.
Yeah. But we definitely understand, like you mentioned before, that we know horror movies in this particular movie. Yeah. So our characters are aware of other horror movies. We get a lot of instances of this. But the reason that we come to find out all about this is that the person on the line wants to play a game.
Yeah, and this was, Drew Barrymore mentions that she's about to watch a scary movie, and he says, do you like scary movies? And then asks her what her favorite scary movie is. This all was inspired by Kevin Williamson house sitting, and he noticed an open window in this house that wasn't his. It's a strange house to him. And so he calls his friend, like, as he's walking around checking out the house to make sure it's okay. He said, did I open that window? Was it open already? And his friend starts making the incorrectly making the Jason noise, which is actually ma for kill her mommy. Fun fact. This is a bonus for the Scream episode.
Factoid.
But Kevin Williamson is like, hey, you know, ease up. I'm a little freaked out. He's like, what are you worried Michael Myers is going to get you? And he says, no, that's not Michael Myers that you're doing. You're doing Jason. And so he has this idea of a killer calling someone on the phone and giving them scary movie trivia, which evolves into Scream.
Yeah.
And what I love about Scream, and I want to hit on this as early in the podcast as we can, is what makes Scream different is that these kids all grew up with the same video stores that we did. These kids all grew up seeing the same awesome painted VHS boxes and movie posters. They all watched the same movies, and so these references are just as much for us as they are for the characters in universe. They're both diegetic, that's my $5 word for the podcast, meaning in the world of the movie, and they're also nods to the audience without being too on the nose about it.
Right. And we do come to find out that the reason that this person is calling is because they've got Steve tied up in the back.
Yeah, and Steve was actually in the running to play Billy Loomis. The actor who plays Steve was in the final callbacks to play Billy Loomis, and they thought he was so good, they threw him a bone and let him play Steve, which was apparently fairly grueling with the prosthetics that we'll talk about in just a second.
Yes. So to save Steve's life, she needs to answer these horror questions correctly.
There's a warm-up question and then 2 other questions.
Correct.
And
then that third question
is
the one that she gets wrong, like you mentioned. Yeah. And it is a Friday the 13th question. And it is, who's the killer in Friday the 13th? And she says, Jason.
Yeah, and if you watch our channel, you'll know that it's not Jason.
No.
Mrs. Voorhees was the original killer. And so poor Steve has to die.
Poor Steve has to die.
I'm going to really try to not quote this entire movie for you all. And when they kill Steve, in the director's cut, there's actually a lot more footage of what they do to Steve. And I don't want to get completely kicked off of social media here by saying in detail. But the shot of Steve's demise.
Insides.
Yeah, his insides. They linger a lot more, and the MPAA said absolutely not, and so you just get a glimpse after the fact, but you watch the whole thing roll out if you can get your hands on the director's cut of the film, and it's worth watching. It's really interesting. There's at least 3 big changes in the director's cut as compared to the theatrical release.
Yeah. And the killer does throw a chair through the door.
Well, that's the final question. That's the makeup question, or that's her question, I guess. It's, what door am I at?
Right.
And so if you're watching this movie with any sense of logic, you have to know that there's 2 killers right from that moment, right? Which door am I at?
Oh, yeah.
He's at both doors.
Yeah, but she doesn't know that.
No, she doesn't know that, but we as the audience, if we're smart enough, could have pieced it together from the get-go.
But why would we have thought that?
That's the question.
That's the thing. Like, that's what I love about this film, is that they throw us so many red herrings and also give us all of the information that we need right up front.
And they're subverting expectations at every corner. You'll see it later with Billy Loomis. You'll see it with Neil Prescott being a really great red herring. Yeah. They're subverting expectations early on, and they give you everything you need to piece the whole mystery together.
Yeah. And I have here, Steve is definitely dead.
No, yeah, Steve is not a red herring. And if you see the director's cut, there's no question. He bites it.
Yeah. And then as this whole chase scene is happening, and by the way, this is brilliant. A brilliant performance by Drew Barrymore. Absolutely fantastic. As she is running through the house, outside of the house, she sees her parents, and they're coming back home. While all this is happening, her popcorn is burning.
The VHS play screen, like that blue screen on the old CRT TVs, is backlighting the room. It's a beautiful shot, and that was done intentionally to kind of put you in the mindset of watching a scary movie, about to watch a scary movie. Wes Craven actually met with Drew Barrymore prior to shooting and asked her, about traumatic events that had happened in her life. And I don't want to get into the specifics or anything, but there was one thing that she had read about that really touched her, that he would give her just the word and she would become emotional thinking about it. And so he really coaxed this performance out of her completely consensually, that allowed her to go to these deep places and provide this performance, which is just truly, truly unsettling.
Yeah, so good. And while she's running, she's stabbed in the chest.
That's something the MPAA also had an issue with. The scene, he reaches around her and just jabs her right in the upper chest, heart area.
Right.
And the MPAA said, absolutely not. And he said, we only did one take of it, which of course was a lie. So he got that shot. That shot remained. But like I said, 3 other shots were edited. But yeah, that was one of the ones that he snuck in there by fibbing to the MPAA. Hey, as you do.
I do love that after that happens, she's on the ground. She's being choked at that point, but she's still fighting back.
Yeah, and she tries even to call for her parents after she's been choked, and she can't do it.
She can't do it. But I think the thing that I love most about this scene is that Casey gets to see who is behind the Ghostface mask before she dies.
Yeah, we don't.
No.
And this is extremely giallo here. I don't think we can minimize the influence of Italian horror from the 70s on American slasher films, specifically the slasher films like Happy Birthday to Me, slasher films like My Bloody Valentine, not so much exploitation slasher films that Tobe Hooper was putting out like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or The Funhouse, but the ones that have the whodunit element, even Friday the 13th. But once we start to anchor into horror icons like Michael, Freddy, Jason, Chucky, all of the slashers that have a name, we lose this whodunit element, which I think Kevin Williamson very wisely brings back. We have this killer who, we see the killer, we see the mask, but he's black gloved, and there is an exposition of who is the killer that the audience doesn't get to see. And I think about the opening scenes of Happy Birthday to Me, where she's like, oh, it's you. And like totally recognizes her killer before it happens.
Right. And then her parents, unfortunately, find Casey.
Which was the second big cut from the MPAA.
Yeah.
We linger on that shot of Casey in the tree, inspired by a shot from Suspiria. And we just do a slow roll up to that, a dolly push in on Casey in the tree. And they actually had to cut out every other frame to speed it up. It had to be done in 2x, which is why it looks so jittery. And when I was in the theater seeing this, the jitters on that made it creepier.
Yeah.
But watching the director's cut, you're forced to look at Casey in that tree. Yeah. And you're forced to take your time looking at her. And it is very unsettling. When I bought this video in 1997, as soon as I could buy it, and trust me, it wasn't like a 3-month turnaround to streaming in those days. I went to West Coast Video.
Yeah.
And bought it. And I can't remember whether I bought the Sydney cover, because they had multiple covers. And I get it home and I watch it and I'm like, this isn't the movie that I saw 3 or 4 times in theaters. I bought the director's cut.
Oh.
And so like they had little pieces of audio that were sliced out. Stu's dance that he does after school gets canceled was sliced up. And that's to keep the runtime the same, I guess. I don't know why they did it. But the director's cut of the film was a little rougher in some spots, but it had all of the gore. And so young Vince, with unsupervised access to dial-up internet, so wrong, went and researched this and figured out that I had the director's cut. And that was something I was extremely excited about and felt very proud of for some reason. I just picked a box. Like, they had like a whole cast box. They had a Drew Barrymore box and Nev Campbell box. I don't remember all the boxes. I'd have to look. That's not in my notes. But the one I picked was the director's cut, and it was so cool to see that movie 100 freaking times, I'm sure. And now I wish I could get a copy of it.
Yeah.
It's not on the steelbook that we have.
No.
So Casey is no more. Her parents, Mr. Becker, tells Mrs. Becker to go to the Mackenzies.
Go to the Mackenzies.
And call for help, which is a just on-the-nose Halloween reference, which Halloween H2O pays back in kind when Laurie tells her kids, her adult college, high school age kids, almost adult kids, to go to the Becker's house and call for help at the end before she faces off with Michael, which is just a cool little, like, I mean, Scream owes so very much to Halloween. We'll talk about how it is the score for the third act.
Yeah.
But Scream owes so much to Halloween. It's nice that Halloween, who Scream would arguably save the franchise in terms of style and tone and structure with H2O, it's nice that they gave them a nod back.
Yeah. And then, this is my favorite. After this all happens, we jump to Sydney on her computer. Her very, very old
It just puts
computer.
us in a place and time on dial-up, for sure.
Yeah.
It's so wild.
The computer is just so brilliant because it really does, like, root you in a specific place.
How far we have come in 29 years. Oh, God.
I know. And Billy's coming through the window.
Yeah. And Wes Craven says this isn't a reference to Nightmare on Elm Street, but it is, I mean, it's undeniable that he looks like Johnny Depp
he
and
does
comes through the
kinda.
window like Johnny Depp. Wes Craven says that was not intentional, just, I guess, the vibe he liked.
I guess so.
Whatever.
Hey, whatever floats your boat, I guess. Sydney's dad shows up, and she's trying to hide Billy because Billy shouldn't be in her room
Yeah, at night.
at night.
And she has a unique feature of her bedroom where the closet door will block the access to the bedroom door, which was how Kevin Williamson's childhood bedroom was. But they scouted so many locations to try and find a house that had a door that would be blocking the access to the main door. The closet door would block access to the main door, and they couldn't find one. They found this beautiful piece of land for the Prescott house. They loved the house, so they actually built the closet into the bedroom. They physically built that door to execute the script the way it was written. And they said that the rental fees were nearly, or the repair fees were nearly as much as the rental fees for what they did to this poor house. Yeah, it's just wild.
Now, it is kind of funny because I have a closet in my office in our house that actually does that.
But your closet in our house looks like it was in addition to the room.
Correct.
Because it didn't have a closet and they wanted to make it a bedroom.
Maybe somebody was,
Maybe someone's creeping in our windows.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I mean, not now, but we find out that Sydney's dad is going away for the weekend.
Yeah.
A very important fact that will come back later.
Yeah.
And we also learn that Billy is Sydney's boyfriend.
Yes, with some interesting over-the-clothes making out that happens because Sydney wants to take it slow, especially over the past year. And what's really interesting is we start to see this thing, oh, it's been a year, it's only been a year, and we don't know what happened a year ago. I mean, we do now. But when you first watch the movie, you don't know what happened a year ago. And so everybody's kind of talking around it for the first third of the movie.
Right.
It's really well written in that respect.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, when Billy goes too far, Sydney says no. He actually respects that, which kudos to you, Billy.
Billy is a stand-up guy who has done nothing wrong.
Yet.
Well, that's also not true.
Well, okay, that's fair. That's not that we know
That
of.
we know of.
So he's going back out through the window because he obviously can't go through the house.
Yeah.
And when he's on his way out, we see Sydney flash him.
Which Wes Craven chose not to show any nudity there, and Kevin Williamson was in support of it. Again, we're subverting expectations here as soon as the title card hits. It's not what we expect out of a slasher movie. We expect the gratuitous and the exploitative. We get none of that.
No, we don't. And now we're at school.
I love the first shot of the high school. Now we should talk a little bit about Santa Rosa School Board and
Oh, yeah.
how this plays into the broader themes of the movie, and a really interesting curiosity in the credits, which is no thanks whatsoever to the Santa Rosa School Board. And you wonder, why would they not thank somebody and then explicitly not thank somebody? And they were supposed to film at the high school in Santa Rosa. And the school board read the script, and we'll talk about the scene that set them over the edge in just a second. And they said, no, you can't be here. There was rising teen violence. There was hyper-conservatism. We had this sort of conservative pushback starting to start politically speaking. Bill Clinton was in his second term, and so the conservative wing, specifically in the House, was pushing very hard against him. And it's interesting to watch this play out whenever you have a movie that is specifically about the influence of horror movies on young minds, and whether they need a motive to do what they're doing, or whether whether there is or isn't a motive. And the school board acted like, in some ways, a small version of the MPAA in how they treated this film's violence, saying the violence is over the top, and then the MPAA comes in and has, in a film with considerably less violence than some of the slashers we see today.
Yeah, I would agree.
In a film with considerably less sex and considerably less nudity, zero nudity.
Zero nudity, yeah.
The MPAA was still very conservative with them, and the school board even more so, arguably. So it's really interesting that we pull up on this high school that is not a high school, that they were kicked out of their original location. But the shot I love when we get to the high school is a crane shot that comes in and pushes down, and there was a cameraman riding the crane who then steps off of the crane and keeps walking up towards the front of the school. It is one of the most brilliantly executed shots in the movie. It's one that Wes Craven was probably most proud of because he mentions it so strongly in the audio commentary for the movie.
Yeah, that is insane
Yeah,
that they were able to pull that off.
I wouldn't ride a crane.
No. While we're at school, there are cameras everywhere and news reporters everywhere.
One played by Linda Blair from The Exorcist.
I was going to talk about that a little bit later because she does show up a little bit later.
Yeah, she has 2 or 3 cameos in this.
She's got a little bit of a cameo action going on. But this is where we are introduced to, we're going to be introduced to a lot of characters coming up here. Gail Weathers.
News reporter.
And Tatum.
Best friend.
Correct.
Sassy best friend.
Sassy best. I love Tatum.
Yeah.
She's so great.
She's outstanding.
I love her so much. Sydney is in class, and Casey is obviously not there.
Yeah, and Sydney says, I sit next to her in English, and Tatum says, not anymore, you don't. And it's so...
Such a jarring thing to say. Literally, this girl was just...
Yeah, and Kevin Williamson says this was always meant to be a wicked film. And what strikes me is all of these characters are super cynical.
Yeah.
And I mean, I felt the vibe. I lived through this period, so of course I felt the vibe when I saw it originally. But when you go back and you watch it again, everybody here is super cynical.
Right.
And I think it's just another aspect of the postmodernness of this movie. And not to, I could rail about postmodernism for a long time, and sincerity versus sarcasm, and all of that fun stuff that was happening when we transitioned from the 90s into the early 2000s. I don't know what we would call this right now that we're in, but what we're looking at with postmodernism, and a lot of people call Scream a meta horror film, and I would argue it's not meta, it's postmodern. Postmodern breaks formulas, postmodern is full of sarcasm, and postmodern has a focus on technology and the impact of technology on society. And we're walking around video stores using cell phones when they were just starting to become prominent and making super dark jokes about who sits next to us in English. And I mean, it's just written all over the movie that this is a postmodern horror movie, and probably the first of its kind. And you could say there were a ton of Scream clones. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, which we're probably going to talk about sooner than later. And what they are also postmodern films, I would argue. But what sets Scream apart is the comedy,
right,
and the in references to horror movies.
Yeah, we get a lot of them.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, Sydney is called to the principal's office during this whole thing.
Principal Himbry, played by
Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler.
So good.
Yeah, he's fantastic in this.
He's so fun in this movie. But we are also introduced to Dewey.
Dewey, who I will say is a character who's interesting. He evolved so much over the course of this series. And this is my least favorite showing out of Dewey.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I would agree. And I still love Dewey.
Oh, yeah,
and
no,
I
he's
love
great.
Dewey in this movie.
Yeah.
But yes, I would agree that his character development throughout this entire franchise is probably my favorite.
I will say that David Arquette as a person, at least in our brief interactions
Yeah.
with him, is a lot like Dewey.
Yeah.
When we met David Arquette, he was like putting in a lunch order and like really distracted when we met him, which is fine. I paid for an autograph, not for a best friend.
Correct.
But then he realized that he didn't give us a ton of time and gave us like a free selfie with the baby and like took extra time with us that he didn't need to because he literally had a line out the door. But when he was signing the action figure that's right behind me, he was a little distracted.
Yeah.
And so like completely distractible, just like Dewey, but also completely wholesome and heartfelt, just like Dewey.
Yeah.
And it was just a really interesting thing to be like how much of himself he brought to that character.
Right.
And I will say that a lot of the actors, a lot of the performers in this movie brought a lot of themselves to the characters. One person we haven't met yet that we'll meet soon.
Well, we're
Yeah.
coming up on that scene. So we're having lunch outside with Billy, Sidney, Tatum. And then we get to meet Randy and Stu.
And Stu is the character that Kevin Williamson thought was the thinnest written character, the least developed character. And he's everyone's favorite. I know like 60% of you out there are going to comment, Stu's alive or Stu lives. I mean, everybody's begging for Stu to come back in Scream 7. And I get why. Matthew Lillard is fantastic.
He's Jem.
The fact that Kevin Williamson underwrote Stu, in his opinion, and all the gaps that Matthew Lillard filled.
Yeah.
Another actor who we met who is, minus the murder, conspicuously Stu-like.
Yeah.
A lot like his character. That I know of. But no, he was extremely charming and outgoing. And as we were walking away, you were like, I love your D&D company. And he's
Yeah.
like, come back and give me a hug.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he didn't need to spend, he had a line out the door and did not need to spend that much time with us.
No.
A wonderful guy.
Very wonderful. And I think that his relationship, the relationship that you see between Stu and Billy in particular in this film, and how that sort of evolves, it's a lot like the relationship that Matthew Lillard and Skeet have with each other.
I would agree. Matthew showed up late to the panel that we attended, and Skeet like busted his balls for 5 full minutes.
Yeah.
And you know, much like Billy and Stu,
Right.
they're both extremely charming guys. We've met Skeet twice, and
Yes. He's an absolute joy.
Yeah, just such a good guy, and took a lot of time with our kid that he didn't need to take.
Yeah.
She was like 6 weeks old when we met him, and he was just very gentle and very kind to her. It was really nice.
It was.
And this scene at the fountain, when we have the infamous "How do you gut someone?" and the line "Liver alone."
Liver
and
alone.
I heard you put her spleen in the mailbox, or put her liver in the mailbox next to her spleen and her pancreas. That's what set the school board off. That's what set the Santa Rosa school board off, and said, "This is too graphic. We can't have this associated with our school." Which, of all the scenes, that's probably the funniest, one of my favorite scenes.
It's like one of my favorite scenes.
It's most
in this whole
iconic.
movie.
Matthew Lillard signed that action figure, Liver Alone,
Right.
Matthew Lillard. Like, it's iconic, and that's the one scene that pushed them over the edge.
Yeah, there were so many more things that they could have
seriously.
been upset about.
100%.
But hey, I guess if that's how they're gonna do it, then
But our core group is present and accounted for.
Yes.
At least the people that I wanted to meet the most are
Correct.
present and accounted for. And the relationship is extremely natural and lived in. And these young actors, because they were young actors.
yeah.
Skeet had filmed a couple films before this, but none of them had been released. And Nev had never done a film, if I'm not mistaken. She was just on Party of Five.
Right, because this was before they both did The Craft together.
Yeah. So these folks are young, and they do an outstanding job.
Yeah, they really, really do. And it does feel so natural. Like, this feels like a friend group that you had.
And they said it felt like summer camp when they were filming it. So, you know, you get that vibe.
We do find out in the scene that Stu used to date Casey.
That's huge. And we also, Stu says, "Nah, I didn't kill anyone." And Billy says, "Nobody said you did." Which for me, Like, it could just be a denial of involvement, but for me it feels like Billy, spoiler alert, Billy was the 29 years ago this movie came out, just for reference. Billy feels like he's the one who did the killing, and Stu feels like he's the one who was on the phone.
I always felt like that. Like, that is sort of my gut instinct. And I don't know why I feel that way, but I have always sort of felt that way. And I think that having Stu on the phone with her is actually because he knows Casey.
Yeah.
In a way that Billy might not know
He
Casey.
can push her buttons a little more.
Yeah. And there are a few instances where I'm like, oh, that's definitely Stu on the phone. And it's so interesting because Roger L. Jackson, he didn't know.
Yeah, how would he
But,
know?
like, it feels like, the vibe feels like.
And Kevin Williamson didn't plot this out. It just
Right.
worked. And, like, I don't know how it just worked, but he didn't plot out who was doing what, when, and where. He didn't plot out who would be in what scenes and who wouldn't be. He just wrote the movie and it worked, which is so wild. Yeah. So any theory you have essentially about who killed who can't be negated because there was no overarching plan when it was written. So you're right. Congratulations, you're right.
Congratulations. We're going to go based off of our vibes here.
Yeah, and we're right. So, but you're also right.
You're also right. Congratulations. So after we are in that scene, we are at Sydney's house. She's alone because Dad is out of town.
At the Holiday Inn.
Correct. Now, this is where we get some backstory and some information on what happened 1 year ago.
Yeah, we see some news reporting.
Yes.
And we find out that Maureen is no longer with us.
Her mother.
Her mother, Maureen Prescott, is no longer with us, and it happened in a violent way.
Yes. And the thing that's interesting about this scene is that there is a total sense of unease this entire scene.
When she goes to check the closet door, we are expecting as an audience someone to jump out of the closet. They set up this closet and give it so much weight. The score, Marco Beltrami's score, elevates right there, and it's about to, someone's going to jump out. And I should note that that's the first time he wrote a score. They were looking for an unknown, and they put out a call, and they found him, and he nailed it.
It's crazy.
And went on to do the other Scream scores.
Right.
And other movies besides that.
Yeah. Sydney falls asleep and wakes up because she's getting a call from Tatum. And then she gets a call.
Tatum will be going to the video store, actually.
Oh, yes, yeah.
To pick up some videos, as you do at the video store. And she suggests all the right moves because if you pause it just right, you can see Tom Cruise's penis.
I'm glad that you brought this up.
Well, I bring it up because it's the line that got Kevin Williamson the second most amount of harassment in the entire film. We'll talk about Tatum's other line that got him the most amount of harassment later on. But yeah, a brilliant delivery by Rose McGowan when she says that line. But that line apparently put Kevin Williamson in some hot water.
So do we know if all of the other phone calls were done live on set, or was it just the opening scene?
I believe it was all the Roger L. Jackson voiceovers were done live on set and without the actors knowing him.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that. And if you know differently, please comment the correct answer. But I'm of the opinion and of the belief that they did not interact with Roger L. Jackson much.
Okay.
If at all.
Yeah. So then she gets a call. And
she thinks it's Randy because, of course, honestly, it would probably be Randy.
Yeah. Because Randy loves the horror genre. She knows that he is also works at the video store.
He's been fired from the video store twice.
Yeah. Yeah, yes. I love that Sydney just completely dismisses the horror genre as a whole.
Yeah, she says all the things she dislikes about the choices that people make, the stupid choices that get them into trouble in horror movies typically. And then we'll see her make all of those choices later because all the plans you have go out the window when there's a knife-wielding maniac in your house.
Correct. Well, she tries to find the voice outside.
He says he's on her front porch, and that's what makes it unique, because a phone call is not original.
Correct.
Being on the front porch is original.
Yeah, but she doesn't see anyone.
Nope. She picks her nose even and says, "What am I doing?"
Exactly. But then this person gets a little frustrated and attacks her from inside of the house.
Yeah, he says that he's the one who killed her mother.
Yes.
Which is very interesting because her mother's killer has been convicted.
Right.
And is going to jail.
Based on Sydney's testimony.
Yes. And that's really another subplot and a point of emotional conflict for Sydney, as she is so locked into believing that this is unrelated to her because she has to admit she's wrong and put an innocent man in jail.
Right.
If she believes that this is happening to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Ghostface pops out of the closet, and I want to take a minute here to talk about the Ghostface costume.
Yeah.
Because we're going to see maybe we should talk about this once Dewey arrives at the door.
Okay. As you do, the killer is running around trying to get Sydney.
She runs upstairs
She
like
goes
some
up-
big-breasted woman in a horror movie.
Correct. She does go into her room, and we get that closet shot.
Saves her life.
Saves her life, and she calls 911 on her computer.
She texts 911 via messaging
Yes,
app.
I'm sorry.
So
It's not a call, it's text.
It
but
never made sense to me because I had never in my life experienced the ability to DM nowadays or to chat room in those days 911. I didn't know 911 had an AOL chat room. I don't. Who was she messaging?
This is the first thing that they ask ASL.
Yeah, seriously, honestly, like. And for anyone under 30 out there, that's age, sex, and location, which is what you would ask.
Did we just out ourselves?
Yeah, listen, I'm old. They know I'm old. If you watch my content, you know how old I am.
But Billy appears again.
Yeah. And what he does first, outside of being like, hey, are you okay, is drop a cell phone.
A cell phone.
And now, I know it's hard to imagine for our younger listeners and viewers, not everybody had a cell phone back then. I had to borrow my mom's cell phone when I went out. So Billy having a cell phone is extremely shady.
Yes.
Although he does say when being interrogated by the sheriff, everyone's got one, Sheriff.
Yeah.
Which is clearly not true because Sydney has to direct message 911.
On her computer.
On her computer. She didn't even have a phone in her bedroom.
No.
Oh my gosh.
But Dewey
arrives at the door. Holding the mask. And now this mask is so iconic. There are, if you can spot them all in this shot, or if you watch our other content, at least 3 Ghostface masks on our set. We have the zombie Ghostface, the aged Ghostface, and the traditional Ghostface mask. As you do, as a normal person would have in their office.
Absolutely.
This mask is made by Fun World, and it was found in a box in a garage when they were location scouting because it just said a 5 and dime drugstore mask in the script. They had no idea what the mask should be. So they find this, they ask the homeowners, hey, can we take this mask? And they're like, I guess. And they take the mask and bring it to the effects department and say, can you make us something like this? And they turn in a number of prototypes that they were going to use for the movie. And none of them worked. So they just reached out and said, hey, can we license this? They reached out to Fun World and say, hey, can we license this? And Fun World's like, yeah, sure, license it. It's not like we're going to be selling a ton of them, just use it in your movie. And so Miramax did not own the copyright to Ghostface, or Father Death, as he's called in the film. They licensed this, which is like a huge missed opportunity now watching everybody.
Yeah.
There's a Ghostface costume that I have tucked away behind that curtain that I wore for Halloween last year. Everyone has put on a Ghostface mask at some point if you're a horror fan. The other interesting thing to note here is that the robe didn't necessarily come with the mask. The robe was a separate thing that they designed for the film. And up until shooting, the robe was slated to be white. It was Miramax Dimension and the producers, who we will not name, who ran that studio. They suggested that black is scarier and to change the robe to black because it was supposed to be a white robe up until shooting. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I can't imagine Ghostface all in white. They were like, well, the white robes, he's a ghost. And I mean, I guess, but...
Can you imagine the cleanup that would need to happen?
But can you imagine how cool it would have been with the blood?
Oh, yeah, sure, but like...
Yeah, no. But again, the continuity would have been off. In fact, the stunt guy who did Ghostface for most of the movie decided, because continuity is going to be an issue with the knife, because he uses a Buck 120, I believe is the model, hunting knife. The continuity of that silver blade with the blood spatter was going to be an issue. That's why Ghostface wipes the blade after he attacks, to preserve continuity, so it's always a clean blade.
Hey.
My thoughts are those gloves must be so nasty.
Yeah.
in the world of in the shooting of the movie, but also in the world of the movie, those gloves must be gross.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Tatum shows up.
in her red punch buggy.
Yes.
No punchbacks.
Correct. To pick Sydney up.
And my favorite moment in this is when she's staying at our house, and Dewey's like, does Mom know? So great.
Yeah, so in case you don't know, Dewey and Tatum are brother and sister.
They're siblings, yeah. Dewey is Tatum's older brother.
Yes.
And she undermines him as a police officer or a sheriff's deputy at every moment, every chance she gets. Yes. And so, yeah, does Mom know? It's just this
so
wonderful
good.
piece of relationship that, maybe you don't get with Stu in terms of him being a fleshed out character. Dewey and Tatum are so fully realized in this movie, it's unreal.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then Gail, she just shows this bitch is everywhere.
Yeah, she's relentless.
Everywhere.
And she says, Jesus the camera. And her cameraman, Kenny, who I just love, actually the actor who played Kenny, put on 20 pounds to play this role because of Gail's line here coming up. Because he says, my name isn't Jesus, which is like one of the funniest. And I feel like it's ADR'd in, like it's recorded after the fact and plugged into the movie. And she just like dresses him down because Sydney gets away and calls him fat tub of lard. And so this poor actor put on 20 pounds to play the role because of how badly Gail is written to like dress him down.
Is the actor W. Earl Brown?
Yes. Pulling that out of nowhere.
I got Scream knowledge, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it is.
I love that. I love that about you.
Yes, I don't even have that written down.
I'm not referencing my notes for most of these, and that's what's really alarming here. I have 8 pages of notes, and I'm doing most of this from memory.
Yeah, well, we all probably could. So then we go to the police station. Then Sydney wonders where her dad is.
Yeah, they still haven't found him.
They haven't
But
found
they'll
him.
keep looking. That's our first instance of Neil being a red herring.
Right.
Which happens not only outside of the world as an audience member, but as we'll see, inside the world of the movie as well, Neil is supposed to be, if not a red herring, the decoy.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Billy is interrogated about his phone with his dad in the room. No lawyer present.
No
Just
lawyer.
his dad.
Who looks surprisingly like the Wolfman for some reason. And he's like, contact Vital Phone Comp, they'll have the phone records. And the sheriff's like, yeah, thanks, we're on it, Hank. It's like the most sarcastic.
So condescending.
Yeah, and the sheriff actually played one of the cops in Nightmare on Elm Street, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
He was the cop who sees Nancy up in the window during the Home Alone sequence in the third act. That's what I'm sorry, I cannot see that as anything but. And I know Home Alone came after, but she like booby traps her house to
Yeah,
get Freddy out of the
true.
dream world, and it's my favorite part of the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Billy is under a lot of suspicion, obviously, but I think my favorite part of this scene is that very intense glare that he gives Sydney from inside of the office.
Interrogation, yeah.
It's so good.
Sydney's there with like Dewey's coat over her shoulders, just looking traumatized, and he's
just
like, and it's like, dude, you're trying to not look suspicious here. Why are you mean mugging all of a sudden?
Yeah.
If you're from Pittsburgh, you're gritting on her.
Right.
That's some 90s lingo that I'm not cool enough to use.
And then Gail shows up again.
She's everywhere.
Everywhere. She realizes that all of the reporters are out front. She's like, where's the back of the
there has to be a back
station?
door.
And I'm like, how does... And then, of course, that's the door that they go out of course.
Oh, yeah, no, Sydney
Very
cold clocks
iconic
her. She just
line.
punches her right in the face whenever Gail says, I'll send you a copy. And
Boom, bitch went down.
yeah, boom, bam, Sid, super bitch, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the, anyway, so Gail is not in the wrong here, and that's what makes it so hard, because Gail's absolutely correct. Her book, at least this book, we'll see later in the series how her books play out. This book is accurate.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because Sydney is also in the right here. She doesn't want her family's privacy disturbed. She doesn't want to be called not a liar, but a misidentifier.
Right.
And, when she asks Gail later if Cotton's story has changed, Cotton, the man who was convicted of killing her mother, she says not a word of it.
Right.
And so it's difficult because everybody's right here, and also Gail sucks.
Yes.
I know there are people out there. I know that some of you who are watching, I know that a lot of you who are watching, Gail is your favorite character, and I'm sorry to tell you, I don't vibe with Gail. I'm sorry.
Same.
And in this film specifically, Gail is ruthless.
She is, man.
And no, she comes around in the third act.
She is, but she is relentless.
Yeah, it's really tough.
She is
early
relentless in this movie.
Especially as you're going on this journey with Sydney. And Sydney is, still really wounded from the death of her mother. Yeah. And Gail is so much of a hound. Mm-hmm. If you're rooting for Sydney and you don't know any better, and you don't know that Cotton's not guilty, Gail's a really tough order to sell.
Yeah. But like you mentioned, they're back at Tatum's house after that, and they talk about Sydney punching Gail.
Dewey gives her some ice for that right hook.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dewey, ever the gentleman.
I know.
I love the big brother relationship that Dewey takes on with Sydney in this film, and more so in later films. Yeah. It's a really special relationship.
It really is. But Sydney receives a call.
Yeah. A call from Roger L. Jackson.
Yeah, from Roger L. Jackson. And that really throws a wrench into things because Billy's in jail.
Billy's supposed to have done it. Yeah.
And so that's when you're like, oh, I guess Billy isn't the killer, because at this point you're not thinking that there were two killers.
Yeah. It would have been it's a really easy alibi to have if there's a second killer here. Mm-hmm. And so he hangs up before Dewey can get on, and Dewey, my favorite part of this scene is Dewey being like, hello? Mm-hmm. Like trying to sound all tough, which is just it's so on brand. Yeah. It's so great. Sydney gets a call from Ghostface. Poor Billy boyfriend, you fingered the wrong man again. And it's like twisting that knife in that Sydney's always accusing the wrong person of these crimes that are happening in Woodsboro.
This is the call that feels most like Stu.
Oh my God, it's absolutely Stu.
It feels like Stu is. Like they wrote it with Stu in mind, and I know that's not the case.
It has to be Stu.
It has to be Stu,
there's no other way.
Right. I mean, they kind of, sort of.
Yeah, they do give
later,
Billy. They give Billy the out that he uses his one phone call, maybe
to call Sydney. But does he have the voice changer with him too?
Yeah,
there's a lot of suspension of disbelief that needs to happen there.
I don't know how you get the voice changer past intake at the jail. Right. So
they don't. Apparently, they don't need lawyers to interrogate. Just do it with your dad in there. Who knows? There's some weird stuff going on.
I guess Hank could have declined the attorney, but no, they were going hard. They were giving him the third degree.
I don't know. And then we get Red Right Hand playing.
Iconic Red Right Hand.
So good.
So this is what actually turned me on to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds when I was a teenager, and I've never looked back. The song is perfect. It's become the anthem of Scream. Yeah. Outside of the acoustic cover of Don't Fear the Reaper that's playing in Sydney's bedroom when Billy sneaks through the window. Mm-hmm. Another nod to Halloween, by the way, because that's playing in Halloween. It's perfect. It's I don't know. That song encapsulates what this movie is.
Right. And we do get it multiple times, but this is the first instance, and this is where we get the backstory on Cotton Weary. And obviously he was arrested for Maureen's death, and Sydney identified him at the scene.
Yeah.
Very important.
She identified someone wearing Cotton's jacket covered in blood.
Yes. Then we're back at the school again.
Yeah.
And Sydney is confronted by a reporter and a cameo from Linda Blair. Gail is also there because of course she is.
Yeah.
And Sydney is pissed because Gail wrote that book about the murder. We get sort of a back and forth between them about this book and how Sydney actually feels about it. We get little nuggets about all of this throughout the movie.
Exposition is naturally delivered.
Yes.
And not in big chunks, so you are engaged the entire time. This film is so well done.
Yes. And Gail talks about Cotton's innocence and how she doubts the fact that Sydney saw him that night. Yeah, and maybe it was just somebody that looked like him.
Then Tatum shows up and is like, nice welt, sweetie. Like, just so sassy. Tatum is like, I think the future movies in the series, the 2 through, I'm going to say 7, even though we haven't seen it, suffer from a lack of Tatum.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I love Tatum so much. And Sydney does apologize to Gail for hitting her. Yeah. Which is nice. It's the right thing to do.
It's what you'd expect your final girl to do.
Correct.
And spoiler alert, Sydney's the final girl.
Yes, yeah. And then when they get inside the school, all of these kids are being complete shitheads.
Yeah. Just dressed up, running around with Father Death costumes, Ghostface costumes, and just terrorizing the school, which proceeds to get canceled.
Yeah, well, yes, but not before we have some commotion that happens before that. So, you know, there's a scene with Stu and Tatum at the lockers, and you know, is Billy okay? Like, we need to worry about Billy right now.
And Stu's like, no, not since you branded him the Candyman. And let's just be frank, no one is confusing Skeet Ulrich for Candyman.
No, absolutely
not even close.
That line cracks me up because I'm like, wait, what?
So yeah, and it is ridiculous. And Kevin Williamson said that he put it in the movie just because he wanted to cram as many movie references in as possible. I'm not sure it works.
That one...
But it is kind of iconic.
Yeah, but it is the one that always makes me go, what?
Not even a little bit. Not even on his best day. And R.I.P. Tony Todd.
Yes, R.I.P. Tony Todd.
For sure.
So
people come screaming
yes,
down the hall.
Sydney runs off.
Yeah.
And
right
runs
into...
straight into Billy.
Who still has the ink on his fingers from being fingerprinted.
Yes.
And Billy pulls some bullshit here. Just straight bullshit, comparing his mom leaving his dad
yes.
to Sydney's mom being dead. And that's critical to understanding the plot and character motivations later. Billy's mom left his dad.
Right.
And Sydney's mom is dead.
I literally have a note in here. I'm like, what is he doing in this scene?
And so it was written that way because they wanted him to seem like such a big asshole that it was impossible for him to be the killer. They wanted it to be so clear.
Like a big old, obviously this guy would be too obvious.
Yes, a reverse red herring. I guess that's just a herring. I don't know. Anyway, but he wanted it to be so obvious that Billy would be the killer that you would think there's no way he's the killer.
Right.
And they do this again later on.
They do it multiple times with Billy, honestly.
Yeah.
But that is probably the most egregious thing that Billy does this entire time, is that he's just like, it's pretty much the same because your mom's dead and my mom's gone.
Yeah.
And
Tatum's like, I knew he was too perfect.
Good Lord.
So Sydney leaves Billy.
Correct.
Because Billy's an asshole.
Yes.
And goes into the bathroom.
Yes, but first, we get Principal Hembry.
Well, yeah, she runs off into the bathroom.
Correct,
Principal Hembry is...
in his office.
Yes.
Yes, with two students who had been running through the hallways.
Yes.
And he is, like, so sick of their shit.
Another thing that really set people off, including the Santa Rosa School Board, is that the principal would use foul language and poke them with scissors and threaten to gut them.
He does threaten to gut them.
Yeah, it's brutal. And he confiscates their Ghostface, Father Death masks.
He does. And then we do get Sydney in the bathroom.
In a scene that was nearly cut from the film. We have Skeet Ulrich's girlfriend at the time playing a cheerleader and another girl talking about how maybe Sydney's a slut just like her mother. More information about Maureen Prescott, that she had a reputation of sorts. And Sydney's crying in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And they kept it in to give that context to Maureen and to show the effect that this had on Sydney and how much her mother's death really is still weighing heavily on her.
How does Sydney not know these rumors about her mother prior to all of this?
You can only hear the Richard Gere gerbil rumor so many times before it stops being a rumor.
Okay. When the girls leave and Sydney is obviously upset, we see the killer.
I don't know that it's the killer. So we have
I guess
blue
we don't
jeans.
know.
We have the same boots, but we also see in the next scene coming up, the sheriff is wearing those same boots.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's the sheriff in the bathroom, but those are some pretty common. Those are the Woodsboro boots.
What would the sheriff be doing in the girls' bathroom at the high school?
That's why I said I'm not saying it's him, but it's someone who is maybe not dressed 100% like Ghostface and has no buck 120 knife and just kind of goes at her and then runs into and falls into a garbage can as she escapes. And he doesn't pursue her anymore.
No.
So it could have been somebody seeing her going into the bathroom, knowing she was attacked the night before, and just wanting to give her a good scare. A third miscreant.
A third miscreant.
We have the two that are in the office right now.
So Dewey shows up at the school, and Gail goes to talk with him, and she's flirting with him because she obviously wants information from the police department. This is not her genuinely being interested in Dewey at this point.
Yeah. It's
in
not.
my opinion.
I would say it's probably not. It's hard to say. I don't know if there's genuine interest in like getting married to Dewey by Scream 3, but she might find him attractive. Who knows? I mean, he is 25. He was 24 for a whole year. She tells him the demographic she's most popular with and says, "I guess I just missed you."
Vince is definitely just going to continue to quote this entire movie.
I probably could quote the whole movie. It's a sad thing about me. It's a character flaw.
Yeah. I don't think it's really a flaw. Principal Himbry suspends classes for the day. And they announced that 9 p.m. curfew. There
is a 9 p.m. curfew citywide, but that's not going to stop Stu from having a banger of a party at his house.
Right.
And, telling the girls to bring snacks.
And he's all over Tatum in this scene.
Yeah, it is. It's completely unscripted. It's completely unblocked. It's two actors who are feeling comfortable with each other, just going at it. And being wild youngsters.
Teenagers.
I mean, they weren't teenagers. Yeah, quote teenagers. Yeah, that's why I went with youngsters.
Yeah.
Because compared to my old ass, they were.
Yeah. So then we get the scene back in the school with Principal Himbry after they have this whole party conversation.
Who scares himself in the mirror putting on the Ghostface mask for some reason.
Right.
Now, this scene wasn't originally scripted. It was demanded by the studio that there was 30 pages without a death, and they needed to insert a death in to keep the audience interested because apparently all we show up for are the deaths. But it also served as a really great way later in the film to get everyone out of the party because Principal Himbry bites it.
Right, he totally does.
Not before a cameo from Wes Craven playing Fred the janitor wearing the costume from the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes. There's a lot going on in this scene because we get a lot of him looking in closets, looking in hallways, changing locations, moving rooms. And he's not feeling comfortable.
No, he gets a vibe. He catches a vibe.
Definitely. He should catch a vibe because that killer comes out of the standing closet.
No, he's standing behind the door.
Oh, is that it?
He must have snuck in when the principal leaves the room.
Why did I think it was a closet?
He has the door open to his office.
Oh.
And when he closes the door to the office, he's like,
right.
Nah!
I know why I thought it was the closet because he goes into the closet at one point and I'm just like so hung up on this closet.
He opens his like freestanding closet and he scares himself in the mirror in there when he's wearing the Ghostface mask.
This next scene is with Tatum and Sydney. A scene that I believe has this other line that Kevin Williamson.
Yeah. So they're on the porch. It's the line I quoted earlier. It's the Richard Gere gerbil line as they're talking. And there's also another line that Wes Craven wanted to cut. There were two lines in this movie that he wanted changed. And it was Roger L. Jackson, as Ghostface says, is that the one where the guy had knives for fingers? And she said, no, that's Nightmare on Elm Street. He said, I like that one. She goes, yeah, the first one's good, but the rest sucked. Wes Craven wanted to cut that line because he felt that if he had that in his film, it would be a little bit in bad taste. Kevin Williamson reminded him politely, you directed New Nightmare as well, and that one sucked. And he's like, I guess you're right. I'll take it. And then Tatum says, you're starting to sound like some Wes Carpenter flick. And he thought that was a little weird because he's directing the movie, and also they're referencing him. And that's where some people say this is super meta. And it is self-referential, but... if we're watching real kids, they would be familiar with A Nightmare on Elm Street and Wes Craven. So it's really interesting. I think you could write a book on it. Yeah.
Speaking of books, they're talking about Cotton and Maureen.
Yeah.
And Sydney doesn't believe the rumors that her mother was having an affair with Cotton because that is the rumor.
It is the rumor, and that's why Cotton was involved. And and I'm unclear what his motive to kill her would be. She wouldn't leave her husband, or
I don't know.
Or I guess there's always some bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend, as Stu would say later in this film.
In fact, I believe in this next scene.
When they're at the video store.
That's when that happens. So Stu sees Randy at the video store where he works for the second time.
Yeah, well, it's his third. They fired him twice.
His third time, right. Randy is convinced that Billy is the killer.
Randy's convinced that everybody's a suspect.
Well, he talks a lot about this, how this is a classic horror movie killer.
If they'd watch Prom Night, they'd save time.
And
everybody's a suspect.
I think the funniest thing in this scene is that Randy definitely thinks that he has a chance with Sydney
Yeah.
after all of this.
Stu does not at all.
No, he doesn't.
And yeah, no, so Billy apparently is in the doghouse. Randy wants to move in. And this will be a theme that will extend into Scream 2, that Randy has a giant crush on Sydney. And, you know, Randy's the everyman in this. And Randy's the character who was my way into this movie. I, believe it or not, was not a super cool teenager.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I'm breaking news here. This is not a news show, but that is news.
Crazy.
And so Randy, as that nerd, as that horror movie nerd, was my way into this world, and I related a lot to Randy, and so it's interesting to watch him, you know, grow as a character as much as we get to watch him grow, unfortunately.
Right. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Again, spoilers.
Yeah, spoiler. I also love the line in the scene where they're like, it's the werewolf movie with E.T.'s mom.
The Howling.
The Howling, yeah. Dee Wallace, also a truly lovely human being.
Yeah. I love Matthew Lillard in this scene.
Yeah, he
so
does some
much.
interesting things where he comes in behind Randy and starts like flicking his earlobe. And Wes Craven framed that scene to mimic the end of the movie where Stu comes in behind Billy and is tormenting Sydney in the kitchen of the Mocker house.
Yeah. But Stu does bring up Sydney's dad in this scene.
Yeah, yo, where's her dad's, yo?
Yes.
And that's a very good question. My question is, and maybe it's better asked later, is where is Neil Prescott? Not like, is Neil Prescott in on this, but
where is he?
Where did they
put him? Has he been in Stu's house the whole time?
Has he been in that poor man? Has he been in the closet for like 3 days?
I need to know.
We should have a Scream spin-off.
We don't ever know.
Scream,
just Neil in
Prescott.
the closet. Billy shows up at the video store and he threatens Randy.
I mean, again, way on the nose if you're going to be a killer.
Yes, but and Randy definitely still thinks that he's the killer after that scene.
Definitely does.
He like says it to Stu and like.
But what's interesting here is he doesn't suspect Stu at all.
No, not at all. But again, he's not looking for 2 killers either.
Yeah.
He only thinks there's one.
Yeah. It's true.
So why would he think Stu was in on it?
Because Stu's shady as well.
Well, yeah, he is.
Stu is completely unhinged.
Yeah.
And he used to date Casey.
That's true. So then we get more Red Right Hand and people closing up for curfew. It is way before 9 o'clock, by the way.
One thing that I love about Scream that is missing entirely from Screams 2 through 6 is how, and maybe I shouldn't love this, maybe a lot of people have issues with this, is how Ghostface is just running around when they're shopping and you know, running around Woodsboro in costume.
Yeah.
Just like caught in a reflection, Ghostface is stalking ya. And like, what the hell?
We didn't bring up whenever Hembry died, one of my favorite shots in the whole movie is Ghostface appearing in the eyeball there.
A suggestion from the producers as well, if I'm not mistaken. And so they did a close-up on his eye and composited Ghostface in later.
Yeah, it's a great shot, but that just reminded me of
there's
that moment.
A lot of reflections of Ghostface in this middle part of the movie. And I don't know, when I was a younger man, sometimes I felt like the middle part of this movie lagged a bit, but honestly, as a 40-something-year-old man, I'm loving the relationships developing over this 30 pages without a kill.
Yeah. So while Tatum and Sydney are shopping in the store, they have a really funny moment where they talk about who would play Sydney in the
Dewey
movie.
says she'd be a young Meg Ryan.
Yes, but with her luck, they'd cast Tori Spelling.
Yeah. Then they go their separate ways and they go shopping.
Yes,
And Ghostface is lurking.
And Dewey goes to meet with the sheriff. In this scene with Dewey and the sheriff is one of my favorite continuity issues ever.
Yeah.
With the ever-changing cigarette.
Yeah, the length of a cigarette is really hard to keep in continuity. And also as an actor, I've had to smoke on screen before. And if you don't have a high nicotine tolerance, you will be sick.
Right.
Smoking that many cigarettes, getting that many shots.
But wasn't he an ex-smoker?
He was. I think he quit like 10 years before, and he had a really rough time with it. My favorite factoid about this is that Dewey, in an effort to appear more, I don't know, masculine or like on the level with the sheriff, he's eating an ice cream cone, and he takes a lick every time the sheriff takes a drag. And this is also the scene where we get that pan down and we see the sheriff's boots as he's putting out that cigarette. and they're the same boots as our killer. I'm building suspense like we haven't said it's Billy and Stu like 35 times here.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, right.
But we do find out in this scene that the calls were all linked back to Neil Prescott.
Well, again, a giant suspect here, right? We don't know
where
who
he
it
is.
Yeah.
We don't know. All right, so now we're at the biggest scene in this entire film.
This scene was many, many nights. I think it took a few weeks to shoot. Scene 118. And the cast and crew all made shirts when they wrapped saying, "I survived scene 118," because it is the rest of the movie.
Whenever I was watching it again, I actually paused the movie because I wanted to see how much time we had left. It's literally half the movie.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's huge.
It is a big chunk of this movie that we spend at Stu's house at this party.
Stu's house, which is now a bed and breakfast, which you can stay at, or maybe an Airbnb.
It's an Airbnb, I believe.
I think you can
or it was.
You can tour it, and you can probably stay there.
Of course, because we're at this party. Gail and Kenny, of course, show up, camp out, and keep an eye on things.
Gail's trying to find a way in to get her remote video recording device in there.
She's like, I need to get this camera in there.
I need to record all these minors.
Okay.
Without their consent.
But here's the thing. This camera is huge. I don't know how these kids, didn't see it. I know that they're all drinking, but,
She puts it on top of the TV, and they're all over there, changing the VHS cassettes.
Right.
They're putting in different tapes.
Yeah.
How do they not see it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We will get there, but it's, absurd to me.
She's trying to record a bunch of minors without their consent.
Correct.
And then is going to publish this on the television.
She wants to win a Pulitzer, Vince.
Lord have mercy.
Has anybody ever won
a cheesy tabloid journalist ever won a Pulitzer? Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I love that moment because Kenny's like, we could save an innocent man's life. She's like, I just want, you know what this would do for my ratings?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
I have my note. My next note here is that Dewey meets up with Gail, goes to check out the party with Gail, who takes a small, for the 90s camera.
Yeah. And she's just using Dewey to get into this party because he's like, my sister's there, and I'm just here to check up because I'm a deputy.
Yeah. And is it past 9 o'clock? Did Dewey just show up at this party?
Yeah, it's totally after curfew. He walks in and sees somebody drinking. He's like, hey, are you 18? Or are you 21? And then he's like, no, I'm just kidding with you. I'm just kidding. Have fun. Be safe. And it's like, Dewey.
No wonder Tatum gives him so much shit.
He's just doing some of this to look cool for Gail. But, there's nothing cool about underage drinking. Just kidding. I drank way too much.
PSA.
Yeah, I drank way too much when I was underage.
So when they go up to the door, Stu gets the door, and he asks Tatum to go and get him a beer.
Yeah.
Very important little fact. When Dewey and Gail come in, Tatum questions why Gail is there.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
Tatum also questions why she's the beer wench.
That is true. That is true. And Gail plants that camera.
Super sly, too. She's like, yeah. It is not slick.
It is not. Nothing about
this is slick.
No. And I'm like, how did these kids not see this giant camera?
Well, again, though, they're not we have cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
We're on camera right now.
What?
Yeah. There are cameras everywhere now, and so we're trained to expect it. In the 90s, if you would have told me there was a camera in my living room, I'd be like, that's impossible. That is a physical impossibility to put a camera that would remote broadcast a signal. Mm-hmm. And I love the 30-second delay.
Oh, well, not yet. We'll get there.
I mean, when they realize that the camera's yeah. Kenny's like, there's a delay.
Yeah. But we get Tatum going to grab the beer, beer wench.
And this is one of the most iconic scenes in the film.
It's so funny because that opening scene is so iconic, and I think this scene is probably the second most iconic scene.
Yeah, I would argue that's probably up there.
And she goes to grab the beer, the door closes behind her.
She's locked in the garage.
And the killer's behind her.
Yeah. And what's interesting is Billy Loomis is conspicuously not at this party.
Not yet.
Randy's there.
Yeah.
Sydney's there. Tatum's there.
Correct.
Stu's there. A bunch of people we've never seen before.
A bunch of randos.
Yeah, a bunch of people are there.
Yeah.
And Billy is not there.
Correct. And this is the scene where Tatum actually calls him Ghostface.
Yeah, Mr. Ghostface.
Mr. Ghostface.
Giving him the name. No longer Father Death.
Don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
Spoiler alert, She's not in the sequel.
No, but it's one of my favorite lines in this whole movie.
So he cuts her, which is giving me like the squirms about knife cutting since that moment. Since I saw it in the theater the first time, like I just don't do cutting scenes well.
Yeah.
But he cuts her up real good. And she runs away and grabs some beer bottles.
Yep.
And throws them at him. Now, what's interesting is they had one take to get this right because the costume would be wet and covered in foam. And so they had a PA who they thought would be good at throwing, who nails him twice with these breakaway bottles, like perfectly. And this poor stunt person has to get hit in the face and in the crotch with beer bottles. And I love the idea that, like, all right, PA, all right, random PA, we got one shot at this, don't mess it up. And they nail it.
Hey, it works.
And it's so good.
It's brilliant.
But here's my question. I've never been hit in the face with a beer bottle yet. I don't anticipate this happening.
No.
Wouldn't the killer have a mark?
You would think.
Like, wouldn't Billy have a bruise on his face?
You would think.
Like, I would assume he would bruise
that beautiful face.
I would assume he would bruise fairly quickly after getting a beer bottle smashed in your face.
You can't bruise that beautiful face.
These masks are light latex masks. Like, I don't... Yeah, we're just going to ignore that?
Yep.
And the cigarette's your favorite continuity error?
No, well, no. Actually, one of my other favorite continuity errors is definitely coming up whenever Tatum tries to get away through the cat door.
Yeah, and in completely different positions every time.
In completely different positions every single time we kind of see her in this cat door.
Yeah.
And, like, one shot... You see her like...
Her boobs made it through?
Yes, her boobs have made it through, and then you see her again, and she's like
That's the reason she
back.
can't get through.
Exactly. It's all very strange.
The boobs have made her not able to get through. And,
right.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, it was not only Rose McGowan who went through the doggy door. There was a stunt person as well, and both of them claimed it was extremely painful.
Ugh, I can only imagine.
As she's trying to get through, Ghostface raises the garage door.
Yeah, it starts lifting.
Now this is a very creative kill.
It is.
And I think it's very creative because most garage doors have sensors that would prevent this from happening.
They do.
In any capacity.
But let's suspend our disbelief because it is one of my favorite kills in this entire franchise.
It was so gnarly for the MPAA that they actually had to shorten the kill in the sense where you see her hanging after the kill has... I guess during the kill process, they had to shorten her in the garage door being pinned because the MPAA said it was too gruesome.
Yeah.
It's not very gruesome.
No.
It's the one that I'm like, really? There's so many other kills in this that are a little bit more gnarly than that, but...
But this one is very iconic, and unfortunately, this is where we say goodbye to Tatum, who's one of my favorite characters.
Same. And it was very much so a sad moment, because you do grow to love Tatum in this film.
It's always a very sad moment when I get to this point in the movie, and I'm like, we don't have any more fun Tatum one-liners.
Yeah, no one else is going to be sassy. Maybe Randy. Randy picks up the sassy slack here a little bit.
I was going to say, Stu's a little sassy too, honestly.
Stu's unhinged from this point on. He found a bullshit reason to kill his girlfriend.
That's true. Groups of folks leave. The first group of people, maybe this is like around 9 p.m. and like these are the people that like have to get home because their parents are like, there's a curfew.
Yeah, maybe.
And so they kind of leave. But this is when Billy actually shows up.
Yeah. Who invited Leatherface?
And Sydney tries to find Tatum at this point.
Well, Sydney also goes to talk with Billy.
Well, yeah. So when he basically wants to talk to her, and so she's like, I guess I don't need to find Tatum right this second. And so they go upstairs to a bedroom, and Randy thinks that his chances are now ruined.
As
which
if.
is so funny.
That's all I'll say is as if.
As if. So then we see Kenny, who has the feed of the children, the minors.
Yeah, the minors. And there is a delay.
There's a delay, yeah.
And Gail's like, whatever, we'll roll with it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
This will be important later.
Yes. So Sydney and Billy are talking, and Billy apologizes, and so does Sydney.
Sydney shouldn't be apologizing.
There's nothing that she needs to apologize for. Honestly, he needs to apologize for correlating his mother leaving to her mother being dead.
100%.
Like, that is still the most unhinged thing ever. I literally don't understand it. But they start making out.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the horror movie trope, the virgin survives, which isn't necessarily a hard and fast rule, or as hard and fast of a rule as this movie makes it seem. It's very interesting that they take it in this direction.
Well, because now we get sort of that scene downstairs with the kids watching Halloween. So the kids that have stayed behind are watching Halloween.
And that's the Bob and Linda scene, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. And so Randy explains to them what the horror movie rules are.
You don't know the rules?
Yes. And this is where we also get the infamous,
I'll be right back! Matthew Lillard's brilliant line reading of, Randy says, never say you'll be back because you won't be back. And Matthew Lillard, as Stu says, I'm getting a beer, you want one? Randy says, sure. And he says, I'll be right back.
I say this way too frequently,
honestly,
just like Matthew Lillard does in this scene.
60% of the time when one of us is leaving a room, we say, I'll be right back, in that same tone.
Yes, in that same tone. Dewey is then slamming on the van outside. We get a lot of jump cuts in this scene coming up because I think that they're trying to like throw us off to who the killer is, what is actually going on. There's a lot of like fast-paced things that are happening here. And he tells Gail that there was a car reported abandoned down the road if she wants to go with him. Like he shouldn't be doing his policing by himself.
Well, moreover, he shouldn't be inviting the press along for a walk along.
Right, exactly. Dewey, think.
Yeah, but it seems like it's Neil Prescott's car.
They don't know that, but I think that is the safe assumption, right? Yeah. We then see that the teens get a call, and Randy just picks up. This is how crazy the 90s were, guys. If you weren't around in the 90s, Randy just picks up the phone in Stu's house.
Well, because it's the Mocker's phone. It's not a cell phone. This is a landline phone here. So
Correct.
He just answers the phone.
Answers the phone like it's no big deal.
Like he lives there.
Exactly.
And he gets the message that Principal Himbry has been not only killed, but tied to the goalposts on the football field.
Right.
To which all these kids are like, that sounds awesome.
Let's go.
Let's go check it out. And there's some really weird like ADR that happens when they're driving away.
Yes.
It's just really weird.
It is.
The sound mix is weird there.
That clears everyone out except for Randy.
Yeah, he's just drunkenly, he's like, I love the movie. I'm all about the movies.
So that kind of then solidifies who we now know as being possible killers in this film.
Kenny in the truck, Gail and Dewey in the woods looking for a car.
Yeah.
Sydney and Billy upstairs. Randy drunk on the couch.
Stu getting a beer. Stu somewhere.
Somewhere.
In the house.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, probably upstairs.
Well, we're going to
watching
get there.
Billy and Sydney.
Are you surprised?
No, Stu's kind of weird.
He's kind of weird, guys.
He's unhinged.
So then we come back to Dewey and Gail. And they continue to talk and walk with some flirting going on. This is actually the scene that I think that Gail could be interested in Dewey. Up until this point...
No. I'm fully buying her being into Dewey at this point.
Yes, I feel like it is very
super
self-serving.
Yeah, well, she was super impressed that he let the kids drink underage.
Yeah? Oh, yeah, that's clearly
That's what did it. She's like, he's so cool.
He's so cool, guys. He's 25.
Honestly, though, earlier at the school, she does remark that he has remarkable upper body strength. And he said that that's helped him be taken seriously as an officer of the law. So, I mean, she probably was attracted to him.
Yeah.
And he's charming in a weird way.
I don't know. It's like, it always felt very opportunistic.
It can be both.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, I do feel like in this scene, though, this is where it feels like,
100%.
Oh, she actually has some sort of feelings for
I
Dewey.
100% agree.
So they almost get hit by the teens who are leaving the party with the weird ADR.
And the ADR continues. And they fall down a hill.
And they kiss.
Yeah. And she asks him if that's what he's been looking for. Looking over to the side, and he says, my whole life.
My whole life.
And she's like, no, asshole. It's the car you've been looking for. And
she doesn't call him an asshole.
No, but she turns his head with a tone. Mm-hmm. She doesn't say anything, but it's Neil Prescott's car.
It's Neil Prescott's car.
Dewey realizes, oh crap, it's Neil Prescott's car.
Right. And so now we're like, oh crap, is Neil the actual killer?
And I guess technically he's also in the house and on our list of suspects.
Technically he is.
He's in the closet.
So Billy and Sydney are now getting dressed.
Yeah, implying that something has happened. Interestingly enough, it was scripted that no nudity would happen here, and Wes Craven wanted that to happen as another subversion of expectations. Because we have Bob and Linda. Linda is nude in this scene, and there's a whole bunch of lore with that when we cover Halloween one day, once we feel like we're good enough at this podcasting thing, we'll talk about that scene and how that scene happened. But because that's the holy grail for me, Halloween.
Yeah.
I won't cover that movie until we're confident that we can do it justice.
Yeah.
But it's the subversion of expectations because there is nudity in the Bob and Linda scene.
Right.
And there's no nudity here.
Yeah. I that's one of the reasons I really love this movie.
Yeah.
And that I find it to be so brilliant is that it doesn't need any of that.
We're not selling tickets based on blood and tits here. We're selling tickets based on a really well-constructed mystery, a really snappy script, and really superb direction. And Kevin Williamson actually thanked Wes Craven in the audio commentary.
Right.
When they were discussing this scene for not making it so on the nose and so slashery.
Yeah. But Sydney, while they're getting dressed, asks him who he called.
Because you could have just...
What a random question to ask him.
You could have just called me that night. And that was the last hurrah of Billy as a possible suspect.
Right.
They wanted to anchor it in one more time before they did the unthinkable, which is have Ghostface appear.
Well, but so before that happens, he says that he called his dad, but Sydney knows that Sheriff Burke actually called his dad.
He could have called Stu.
He could have called Stu.
And said, hey, give Sydney a ring, clear my name.
Right. But she doesn't know that. We don't know that there are two killers at this point.
So she thinks he's bullshitting him, and you're supposed to watch that suspicion register on her face, but what she's really seeing is Ghostface.
Right. Yes, the killer
out
appears behind Billy.
And stabs Billy.
Right, in the stomach.
Well, in the chest as well.
Yeah, I guess.
It's all over. A couple of times, a couple of good stabs there.
Yeah.
And then iconically cleans the blood off the blade.
I was going to say, the famous blade wipe.
And goes after Sydney. Now, the logistics of him this chase scene never made sense to me until you realize there's a second way out of that bedroom.
Yeah.
And the layout of the room is kind of weird.
The doors, the amount of doors that are in this house are actually, it's insane.
Yeah, there's a exit from the room that leads to the stairway. So she goes one way and he goes the other, and they meet on the stairs, which is in the way the room is shot in the film doesn't give you that information. So it's like, how the hell did he appear there?
Right.
Which honestly leads to some of this mysteriousness. Like, is Ghostface supernatural? Because honestly, we don't know at this point. Like, it's common knowledge now that Ghostface is not supernatural. But we don't know that at this point in the movie.
Yeah. It's all very crazy. And Sydney is running, trying to figure out where she can go in this house. She ends up on the roof.
Yeah, she ends up going upstairs and doing a Texas Chainsaw Massacre style jump out of the window.
She tries to get Kenny in the van, from the top of the house when she's on the roof. Like, she tries to get his attention, like he's paying attention. He's watching the feed,
eating
downstairs.
some cheese curls.
Right.
I like that he switches snacks at some point. I feel like he switches to the tortilla chips later. Like, he's going hard.
I love Kenny.
Yeah, no, he's snacking hard.
He is. And she does fall onto a boat.
Because this beautiful house, this family obviously has money. They obviously have a boat.
They got a boat.
And rolls off. She takes it like a champ.
She does. She rolls off, but that's where she sees Tatum.
Yeah, unfortunately.
In the garage door. Randy's on the couch watching Halloween. And this is one of my favorite scenes as well, because he's telling Jamie Lee Curtis, and he's talking to Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, Randy the character is talking to the actor who plays Laurie Strode, whose name is Jamie.
Correct.
But Randy's actor is also named Jamie. And Skeet Ulrich, in one of the few times that these men, Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard, were in the costume, I don't think in the audio commentary Wes Craven acknowledged that Matthew Lillard put the costume on, but I think Matthew Lillard, in the panel we were at, said he did a take in the costume as well.
I think that is correct.
Regardless, in the shot that was used, it's Skeet Ulrich, the only time he ever got to play Ghostface, creeping up behind Jamie Kennedy. So Jamie Kennedy's, he's saying, Jamie, look behind you. literally should be looking behind himself.
Right.
It's a brilliant piece of meta writing there.
It really, really is. And I think that, I mean, I don't think that Kevin Williamson
No, it was
wrote
a happy
that.
accident that the actor had the same name.
Yeah.
He wrote it that Randy should be looking behind him, but it's just a happy accident that goes a layer deeper.
Yes, yeah. And the killer is behind him. He's ready to go after Randy. So at this point now we're like, oh, I guess it's not Randy, so we can cross him off the list. But he is spared because Sydney screams.
Yeah.
And Sydney reaches the van.
Yeah. And Kenny's like, oh my God, kid, look behind you.
Right. Yeah, Kenny's watching the footage on a delay.
Yeah. 30-second delay. I told you it would be important.
Very important.
Yeah.
So Kenny goes to open the door.
And run into the house to help the kid.
Correct.
But
he gets his throat slashed.
Yeah. Another cut from the MPAA. Kenny, his throat slash was a lot longer. And you have this moment, this look of realization on Kenny's face, which is absolutely tragic. Wes Craven wanted that moment in because from here on out, we're going to start seeing the brutality of these murders. And that moment anchors in the reality of this hack and slash game that these kids are playing. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because this cuts to the theme of Scream here. And it's that violence in real life is much more powerful and much more serious and has many more consequences than violence in the movies. Mm-hmm. Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson talked a lot about how this is a horror comedy, but when you're killing, you have to be serious and you can break the tension with comedy. And we start to see the impact of the violence on the characters from this moment on.
Yeah.
It starts to get very serious.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, this movie is about the fact that movies don't make psychos. Movies make psychos more creative, or whatever you want to say, whatever
Right.
quote you want to throw out from the movie. But violence has a real world price to be paid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sydney is now running away again because obviously Kenny got his throat cut, and
she can squeeze
running.
through the van portal. Which why does this van have an opening in the back of it? Anyway, probably to run cables. I don't know. I wasn't a newsman in the 90s. I didn't go to school for that.
No.
Ghostface can't fit through, much like Tatum in the doggy door. And he has this moment where he's like, damn! He doesn't say it, but he's like,
he's like very upset about it.
He like slams his knife. It's really cute.
So Dewey and Gail come up on the house.
Mm-hmm.
Dewey goes in, and Gail goes to the van.
Yeah. She notices something's messing up her beautiful shoes. And Courtney Cox had never worked with stage blood before. And so she was really kind of alarmed at how sticky and messy it was. And so in that scene specifically, she's like, I don't really want to walk in it. And unfortunately, they had to get the shot.
Yeah. She tries to call 911 when Randy scares her.
Oh, yeah. And she
Randy
beats the hell out of him with that phone in the face.
Yeah.
And he bruises.
That's true. He does. He bruises.
And Dewey enters the house.
Yeah, Dewey goes into the house, but she's also trying to drive off with the van at that point.
Doesn't go well.
No, because there's blood on the windshield.
Yeah, and a continuity error here is that if she was going to accelerate, Kenny would not have fallen forward. Wes Craven says he apologizes. He's not a physicist. But Kenny falls forward on the windshield, causing Gail to careen down a hill.
Correct,
and slam into a tree.
She drives the van almost into Sydney first.
Yeah, almost into Sydney. Now, the accident was supposed to be like a rollover accident or some kind of other accident than what is filmed. They had a stunt woman in a 5-point harness who careened this van down a hill, and they weren't supposed to slam into a tree. So everybody was panicked on set when this van slammed into the tree.
God.
And the stunt woman comes out. She's like, yeah, no, we're good. I'm fine. And everybody's like, oh my God, thank God. Because this was not a large budget movie. I think the actors made $5,000 on this film for 3 weeks of work. So they were like, this will destroy, I'll never financially recover from this.
Right.
And she just, oh my God, that reference is so old now.
Yeah, it is.
But she just popped right out. She was in a 5-point harness. She was okay. But there was a very violent accident, apparently, if you were on set. Like, it just slammed, the truck slammed into the tree, and it was not scripted to.
Oh, well, Sydney runs back to the outside of the house and discovers Dewey.
Yeah.
With a knife in his bag.
Well, Dewey has to clear the house first.
Yeah. Well.
So Dewey goes in and he's clearing the house. They did this in 2 takes. They had Halloween playing on set when he was clearing the house. And the score is perfectly aligned to him clearing the house. And it's just police procedural work. It's what he was trained to do. But he's doing it in such a way where he's like,
I know.
and it's so exaggerated.
Crazy.
It's so Dewey, and it's David Arquette's brilliant character work. And apparently they didn't try to, they wanted Halloween to be the score, but these screams are happening in time with Dewey clearing the house, and David Arquette is reacting to this in real time, and it's perfectly aligned. They did it in 2 takes, and it just worked so well on the second take, they didn't need another one.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but Dewey comes out, and in the worst moment of ADR, Neve Campbell says, "No," with her mouth, and "Dewey" with her words. They just dubbed over, because I guess you didn't know who it was. We spent the whole movie with the guy. We didn't know who was stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
And Dewey is dead.
He's dead.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, and we'll jump ahead here, the scene of Dewey in the ambulance later on where he gives the thumbs up was recorded at the last minute because Wes Craven goes, "If he tests well, we can bring him back for any sequels." So they just threw this shot together of him getting put into an ambulance, giving a thumbs up because they thought, "Oh, David Arquette did a really nice job. If the audience likes him enough, we'll bring him back for any sequels that we get."
That's so nice.
To be interesting fact, they were writing the sequel while the movie was in theaters. The movie was doing so well and caught on so fast, they started writing the sequel while it was playing. When they were recording the audio commentary for the film, they were in production for the movie.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like it happened that fast.
Yeah. So when she sees Dewey, Sydney then decides to get into Dewey's car.
Yeah, that doesn't work so well.
No.
Kevin Williamson had this scene written in another movie that never got made. It was in a draft of a movie that never got made. It's a scene that had stuck with him for a long time of the killer being on the outside of a car with the keys and the victim inside the car. And there's a brilliant shot that scared the pants off me when I was a teenager of the back of the car opening.
Yeah.
And Ghostface coming in and Sydney's just not aware. She's like, "Where did he go? I don't see him anywhere. He's not doing this game of cat and mouse where he's unlocking alternating doors." It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And she's wounded already. He got her once. He tagged her in the shoulder in the news van. So she's bloodied and she's got a head wound from the fall. She's been through it.
She runs back to where Dewey is. So then Randy...
Yeah. Randy's limping up.
Right.
And Stu is running with him. Jamie Kennedy put a rock. Apparently Wes Craven said it was a big old rock in his shoe to make sure he had his limp correct and consistent. He didn't want his limp to be changing legs. He wanted it to be accurate. He filmed all night with this rock in his shoe so much that he almost had to go to the ER because of it. Which is
insane.
a very Jamie Kennedy thing to do, it would seem.
Yeah.
And so they're playing the game of he's the killer, he's the killer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's that game. And Sydney is not having any of it. She's like, "I'm just going to leave you both outside. You guys can figure it out from here."
Yeah. So she closes the door.
And then Billy comes out from upstairs, the upstairs bedroom, and he literally tumbles down the stairs.
All the way. Now, first of all, the stuntman did a brilliant job here. Secondly, they were a little worried from a directorial point of view that the audience would buy this after watching Billy get stabbed a bunch. Thirdly, in universe, how unhinged is Billy Loomis?
He's crazy.
That he decides to fall down the stairs.
He's like, you know what would be great? Falling down the steps.
Yeah. Now, Sydney has Dewey's gun at this point.
Yeah.
And she's holding Randy and Stu at gunpoint.
Right.
And Billy's like, "No, I'm okay. I was only stabbed a bunch. Give me the gun." And she's like, "Oh yeah, no, we just had sex. Here's the gun."
Right.
Billy lets Randy in because Stu's gone.
Right. Like, Stu doesn't know how else to get into his own house.
Yes, seriously. Like, there's another way in. I'm sure. Legally speaking, there has to be a second point of egress.
Right.
And ingress.
He knows how to get into his own house.
Stu sneaks in the back. Billy takes the gun and shoots Randy. Completely unhinged. And
with the "we all go a little mad sometimes"
one of the best
line.
One of the best lines in the whole movie.
Yes.
Norman Bates, Psycho. And the squib placement is exquisite here. You see Randy get shot in the shoulder, but it puts Randy out of commission. So we're sure now that Randy's not a suspect. We're sure now Dewey's not a suspect. Gail has a head wound somewhere. So that only leaves Stu as the killer.
Right.
We think.
And then we get that corn syrup line.
Yeah. He says corn syrup. Same thing they used as pig's blood in Carrie. Same
Yep.
thing they used for pig's blood in Carrie.
Yep, and then Stu comes back in because he came in through another door because this is his house.
Yeah, with the voice changer saying, "Surprise, Sydney."
And our killers have been revealed.
And now we're at the climax of the movie.
Yes.
They want to play a little game.
Yes, they explain the game.
It's called Guess How I'm Gonna Die.
Yes. And this is where they admit that they actually framed Cotton Weary.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, in the writing of this, there was a lot of pushback from the studio. Kevin Williamson wanted there to be no motive. It's the millennium. Motives are incidental. But Billy actually has a motive because the
Correct.
studio said there can't be a killer with no motive. So Stu has no motive. He claims peer pressure. He's very sensitive.
Yes.
Billy says that the reason he's doing this is because of Sydney's mother sleeping with his dad, and his dad and mother split up.
Yeah, that's why his mom left.
That's why his mom left. So Billy has a motive, a questionable one.
Yes.
I don't think Billy has a motive. I think that the script was written without a motive, and that the producers inserted that line.
When they do that, though, that's when we also get the, let's face it, Sid, your mother was no Sharon Stone.
Yeah, she was flashing her shit around town like she was Sharon Stone. Yeah, and so they discover that they expose why they're doing this, and it's not. I mean, I don't mind Billy having a motive, but the motive being thin because Billy's just a psychopath.
But also, this makes that whole, like, my mom left, and it's the same thing as your mom being dead. It takes that to, like, a whole new level of unhinged.
Yeah, I honestly, like, your mom had to die because my mom left my dad. It's
Because
really,
your mom was sleeping with my dad. Like, it's so weird. It's
really,
all so weird.
It's definitely a false equivocation, let's
Yes.
say. So they reveal.
Yeah, so they reveal that they had Neil in the closet who is, like, bound.
Yeah. So Matthew Lillard says he'll be right back as he's going to go get Neil, and explains that they have something else to show Sydney.
Yes.
And it's a Scream Baby. And it's a Scream Baby was inserted as a rewrite late in filming.
When they knew that they had changed the name of the movie.
Because you have to say the title of the movie, apparently.
You got to.
Kevin Williamson really wanted to say the title of the movie in the movie. And so they inserted the line, it's a Scream Baby.
So we also get an indication on when this is all happening now, like time-wise.
Yeah, it's been
because, well, no, I mean, like, in the night.
Yeah, at midnight.
Because they also waited until after midnight so that they're doing this all on her mother's anniversary, which is even more messed up.
Yeah, no, they're doing this for fun. I don't think that Billy is as upset about. I think that's an excuse. I think that gives Billy permission to do this.
Right. And they plan to frame Neil, which obviously...
Who's been in the closet with duct tape around his mouth.
His car has been abandoned. Now, here's my thing. Where was the car before this? Because they obviously would have seen that this car was abandoned well before this point, no?
It's only a couple of days. You know?
I don't know.
And shame on Neil for going out of town on the anniversary, the first anniversary of his wife's murder.
Actually, that kind of makes Neil a little bit of a bad guy.
Neil's kind of a bad guy. They cloned his cell phone to make it look like he was making the calls. They planted his car, and they're going to kill Neil in self-defense.
Right.
And be the only survivors of this massacre.
Right. Yeah.
They think Gail is dead.
Yeah.
She looked dead.
She looked dead.
They think Randy's dead.
So they are then, they've got to make this look good.
Yeah. And this is where the violence takes a realistic turn. Because these kids did not consider the impact of what they were doing.
No.
Not until the knife strikes their flesh.
Right.
And this is where their plan starts to unravel. Because neither one of them is mature enough to not retaliate against the other.
Correct.
And neither one of them expected what this was actually going to be like.
Correct. Well, and that first, like, when Billy goes into Stu that first time, you can tell that it's like, ooh, that was rough.
Yeah.
That was rough.
And Stu does not like it and goes hard on Billy. And Wes Craven wanted this to be a scene that was incredibly realistic in its display, in its portrayal of violence and how violence affects people. And that's where it ties back to the theme of this movie, which is that violence has a real world toll and that movies are just movies.
Yeah. This is probably my favorite scene in the entire movie.
It might be my favorite scene in the entire series.
It's so good.
there's a lot going on here. From a horror movie standpoint, it's popcorn entertainment. But from a thematic standpoint, it has a really good message.
It's our best killer reveal, too.
100%. Wes Craven with this film really wanted to say that real world violence is a tragedy and it's hard to watch, and that movies don't cause violence. And that's what he was really trying to say with this.
Yeah.
And I think Kevin Williamson was supportive of that with the script.
Yeah. And Billy, after Stu gets Billy back a little bit, he then stabs Stu again, like a lot.
And Stu really starts bleeding out.
Yeah. And Stu goes to get the gun.
And it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah. And Gail is there with the gun. Unfortunately, Gail doesn't know how to work a gun. So the safety is on and she can't shoot anyone.
Right. Billy kicks her. She has the safety on.
Like, he kicks her in this in this wire effect that just pulls her back and like she hits the pole of the porch. I'm not sold that scrawny ass Billy Loomis can kick anybody across a living room and onto a porch.
He really does like send her flying.
It's like some Dragon Ball Z shit.
Yeah, it's some anime.
He's like, I thought you said she was dead. And Stu's like, she looked dead. Still does. It's like the snarkiest, sassiest. You're right. He is a little sassy.
He's very sassy, especially in this scene.
Yeah.
I love how sassy he is in this scene. But when Billy goes to shoot Gail, finally, because he needs to get her out of the way, Sydney and Neil are now gone.
Yeah, they really had no idea of how difficult this would be, especially while bleeding out.
Right.
Because Billy
should have done this after. I don't know why they didn't just do this afterwards.
Why did they want to make a show of stabbing each other for Sydney? Why are you going to tell them your plan? You never tell the good guy your plan. Your plan will unravel the moment you do that.
It's so funny to me that they're like, they need to like show Sydney, like they need to have this big song and dance for Sydney, and it's like, guys, you could have
just shot her.
Yeah, you could have just
and then shot Neil.
Yeah.
And then, Gail's back. Okay, well, we'll shoot her too.
Right, like, but instead they've got like all of these people that are still
wrangling
alive.
Cats. Yeah, it's wrangling cats.
It's insane.
So Gail's knocked unconscious, but Sydney's gone.
Right, and then the house phone rings.
Yeah, and it's Sydney with the voice changer. Although they overlay her voice with Roger L. Jackson, just so you know who's calling.
Just in case you're not 100% sure
who might be calling
who would
them.
be calling them.
Yeah. I'm assuming she's calling from Neil's cell phone.
Yeah.
Because she calls the house phone.
Right.
And Billy just goes just total rage on her. Like, he's like so mad about this. Stu is a little more subdued.
Yes, but Billy hits Stu with the phone in this moment.
Yeah, the blood was too sticky in the scene, and so Skeet throws the phone as Billy, and it sticks to his hand, and he loses the trajectory of it, and it hits Matthew Lillard with the phone, and Matthew Lillard improvises a brilliant line, "You hit me with the phone, you dick," which completely improvised. And so Kevin Williamson, if you ever listen to the audio commentary, and why would you? You have us, but you should listen to it. It's very clear about what was improvised and what wasn't, and that is an improvised line. And another one is. Sydney says she's going to call the police, or has called the police. She has
called the police.
Yeah, and Stu says, "Did you really call the police?" And she said, "You bet your sorry ass I did." And he says, "My mom and dad are gonna be so mad at me." Another improvised line, which gives Stu just so much color and so much texture. It's brilliant acting.
It's so good. That's another one of my favorite lines. And
Billy proceeds to call Sydney a bitch like 800 more times.
Yes, yeah, but that is so good. And then we get that peer pressure line about his motive.
Yes, yeah.
As he's like bleeding out.
Stu, what are you going to tell the police? Peer pressure. It's so good.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Like, and it's also kind of tragic because these two boys were in way over their head.
Interestingly enough, I learned that I'm getting a little woozy here was scripted.
Oh, was it?
It's just a brilliant delivery.
It is so good.
I'm getting a little woozy here. It's so good.
Honestly, this whole scene is probably something I could also quote.
It's just so peak Matthew Lillard. And like, if you watch him in other things, it's maybe not Scooby-Doo, but like if you watch him in other things like Twin Peaks, The Return, you get just glimpses of this brilliant Matthew Lillard acting.
But see, this is what I love so much about the Scream franchise as a whole, is that this is so melodramatic.
Yeah, it's a little bit of camp and a little bit of camp, a little bit of humor, and a lot of horror.
It's brilliant. And we get it with a lot of the killers. And I think that some of my least favorite killer reveals have been a little void of that melodrama. And I think that if they watch this scene in particular, they would really understand what these killer reveals should.
If they watched Scream 1, they'd save time.
It's true. It's true. But Billy goes to look for Sydney.
Yeah, we're in the home stretch here.
Yes.
So interestingly enough, Skeet had open heart surgery as a child. He had some genetic defect that caused him to need open heart surgery. And it didn't heal 100% correctly. He has a very sensitive spot on his chest. And so when Sydney pops out of the closet when he's looking for her and stabs him with this umbrella, the umbrella had a retractable tip. She missed the padding because they put padding on him. They knew he had an injury there, a pre-existing condition. She missed the padding and hit him right in the spot with his open heart surgery wound. And it caused, that scream he lets out is real. It's not acting. It was apparently extremely painful. My question is, why didn't they pad that spot? I mean, yeah, you want to make sure the actor's safe. Yeah, she had a mark to hit and she missed her mark. But like, why didn't you pad that spot? Yeah.
Poor Skeet.
Yeah, I know. Apparently it was very painful.
Ugh.
So she pops out wearing the Ghostface mask, stabs him with the umbrella, and they wrestle around for a minute.
Yeah, and Stu comes to attack her.
Yeah. She, like, drop, roll, kick, throws him onto the ground, and she pushes a television on his head, which is clearly not enough to kill him. Stu lives.
Okay.
In this movie, as far as we know, he dies from the giant pregnant-ass TV falling on him. And pregnant back CRT TV falling on his head.
Yes. But then we get Randy is still alive.
Yeah, Randy jump scares us. He never thought he'd be so happy to be a virgin.
Billy wakes up and he attacks Sydney.
Sydney sticks her finger into that umbrella wound.
Yes.
And Wes Craven says that this was not scripted, but meant to be a visual reversal of the sex they had earlier, with her now taking control of the situation, which I thought was a cool visual metaphor.
It's crazy. Then Billy is shot by Gale. From outside and hands Sydney the gun.
Safety was off that time.
Yes.
And Randy warns that to be careful because the killer always comes back for one last scare, which he attempts to do.
He does, yes.
But she says, not in my movie.
And Sydney shoots him.
And they had a number of different lines there that they tried. They didn't know what line they would want to use, and not in my movie, I guess, is the one that won.
Yeah. Neil comes crashing through the closet door.
He's like, get me out of this. I've been in here for days.
Literally, and Sydney just puts him back in the closet.
Yeah, Jeez. And so they cut him free. He's finally able to breathe through his mouth again.
Right.
And
the police arrive.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Dewey is placed in that van.
They put him, they put that insert shot of Dewey getting into the ambulance. And they had on set a brilliant idea that they would write Gale doing a news report.
Right.
Covering this. So they were feeding her, they were writing that last bit of the movie, the Gale covering this as a reporter. They were writing this on set. They were filming it at sunset, not sunrise. Now, I love the idea of sunrise. A new day is dawn. We've survived the night. It's a new day. There's hope. Everybody's going to recover until the sequel. But they're filming this at sunset in reality. They only had 2 takes because of when the sun was going down, where it was in the sky. And they fed her these lines literally minutes before they had to roll. And they wrote it on set that day.
Crazy.
But it's one of the best endings to a Scream film. It's one of the best endings to a horror film, visually, metaphorically, and it's so true to Gale's character that she literally got kicked across a room in a terrible car accident that went not according to script.
Yeah.
And still is out here with her. No, a different cameraman. I don't even know who's running the camera.
Different camera person because Kenny isn't around anymore.
She lost her cameraman, her partner, and Dewey, who she now has feelings for apparently, might be going to the ICU. So, but it's 100% Gale Weathers.
Oh yeah.
In her most shining moment in this movie.
Yeah.
To do a news report there.
Absolutely.
It's brilliant work.
Yeah, and that ending is just. Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel hope for a little bit.
Until Scream 2. This movie has more to it than just a slasher. It has more to it than just a whodunit. It owes its history to Torso. It owes its history to Dario Argento and the bird with the crystal plumage. Fun fact about that, based on the Screaming Mimi, so much so that they had to pay royalties to the author of the book because they pretty much borrowed that story beat for beat. It owes its history to Dario Argento. It owes its history to the film Torso. It owes its history to Black Christmas, although I think it executes its killer reveal a little bit more thoroughly. And it owes its history to John Carpenter. And it pays its respects to all of those people, directly or indirectly, through being a love letter to horror movies. If you are a new fan of horror, and if you're listening to us, you may not be, but if you know someone who's a new fan to horror, tell them to check out Scream. It's not too scary, it's not too gory, and it is an encyclopedia of horror films that you can add to your to-watch list. And that's how I cut my teeth as a horror fan. I'd watched stuff, I watched what I could, sneaking downstairs, seeing things on cable, what my friends recommended to me, VHSs that were passed my way, whatever I was allowed to rent. But Scream gave me a roadmap to the genre, and I think that's its legacy. I think it's an entry point for people to come into the genre, and they provide a roadmap, and it's a really solid statement on why horror fans aren't necessarily crazy people, and why we're not super dark, and why we have a healthy relationship with fear and with the darker things in life. That's what I'm going to close on, Sarah. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I would agree with that, but I would say we all go a little mad sometimes.
We all go a little mad sometimes. Thank you for watching. We hope you catch us next week, where we'll be bringing you an interview with Paul Tremblay talking about his book, Another. I will be right back as host of that interview. And as always,
stay spooky, my friends.